Greetings and welcome to AmericaTV.me. And thank you for joining us, a TV powered by you. In our last program, I talked about the $1.4 trillion Alana, African, Latino, Asian, and Native American economy. And that message went out through a very diverse group of communities in Minnesota because that documented the power of this huge economy, bigger than the economy of Mexico, and the need to invest in this economy, especially in this legislative session when there's a huge budget surplus. Today, we want to focus on the first Black owned bank in Minnesota that was launched last week, the First Independence Bank. And why you might wonder, why do we have a Black-owned bank in Minnesota? What's the potential? I want to share with you some key facts that will help put this in context. So, when you look at the Black economy, there's a $16 billion Black economy in Minnesota, and this comprises of $7 billion in buying power, residential real estate of about $6 billion. That's a lot of mortgages. Uh, Businesses, black-owned businesses that have about a $1.7 billion in sales, so a lot of business accounts. And these businesses have an annual payroll of $515 million, with monthly rental payments of renters too, accounting for $80 million a month. So this is a huge $16 billion Black economy in Minnesota. And it's about time that a financial institution has been launched. It took a long time, that could tap into this market, because this market has been, as you know, underserved, because there is been issues about access to capital, and the inability of businesses and homeowners and others to access capital in Minnesota. So today have two people that will join us to provide some perspective on the launch of this first Black-owned bank in Minnesota. I have Kavita Kumar, who's a reporter for the Star Tribune, and Connie Sheehan, who's the owner of Push Fitness. So first, let me have Kavita Kumar on screen, and we will uh, have her perspective on the launch of this bank, because she's been covering it for a long time. So, Kavita, tell us a little bit about yourself first.
Yeah, hi Bruce. Thanks for having me. My name is Kavita Kumar, and I'm a reporter at the Star Tribune where I write about the economy and about financial services.
So, you've been covering the story on the First Independence Bank, and from what I read, it took a village for this bank to come about. So, can you share what you found out? How did this bank launch?
Yeah, so think back to the first few weeks after George Floyd was murdered. A lot of companies were thinking about how they could do better about on different racial equity measures, and it brought together a group of the Twin Cities banking executives who normally don't necessarily collaborate together. They decided to come together to brainstorm ideas for how they could maybe come together to address some of the racial inequity equity issues in the Twin Cities region, apart from their own initiatives that each bank was already working on. And as they were brainstorming, one thing that they all, that surfaced to the top was this idea that there wasn't a Black-owned bank in town. And so they saw it as a hole in the local financial ecosystem. So they reached out to First Independence Bank in Detroit, with whom some of them had a relationship, and talked to the CEO there. And they found out from that conversation that First Independence was interested, had been wanting to expand for years. But Black-owned banks are pretty small comparatively, and there's only 16 left in the U.S. And they've been historically undercapitalized, so they don't have a ton of resources. And in this today's banking landscape, it's very competitive. You see a lot of consolidation, costs are rising, so it's harder for these smaller banks to survive on their own. So, but they found interesting potential partner in First Independence Bank, who was interested in expanding to Minnesota. So they helped, offer a lot of resources and help to First Independence to help it expand to the Twin Cities. That included offering up a former branch, a former Wells Fargo branch there on University Avenue that Wells Fargo had recently shuttered. It offered a way for the bank to get up and running really quickly. It was already a former bank, so they didn't have to like rebuild a whole new space and can get it up and running quickly. It had a drive through, which, as you know, like in the Twin Cities, it's hard to build a place with a new drive through, especially Minneapolis. They also offered to sell it loans to help build up its book of assets, so it could have an immediate revenue stream. Because that's always, these small banks don't have the marketing budgets of a JP Morgan Chase, right? That can like flood the market with marketing to try to start business flowing. So they helped get it build a book of assets so we could have a little bit more financial stability to get it going. And those are just a few of the ways that they helped out.
That's great. It takes a village to make something happen at times. And then you had PPL, Project and Pride and Living, that owns the building, according to your reporting, that is actually the landlord, right?
Yeah, right. So Wells Fargo ended up donating the property to Project for Pride and Living, who was in turn leasing it at a very nominal rate to First Independence Bank. And they kind of figured out this relationship so they wouldn't have to deal with some of the tax issues and other financial liability of owning the property themselves. So, and eventually down the road, Project for Pride and Living is hoping to do some sort of other development on that site. But for the first few years at least, it'll just be mostly a First Independence Bank branch there.
Thank you. You've been listening to Kavita Kumar, reporter for the Star Tribune, who's been covering the launch of the first black-owned bank in Minnesota. And we're going to come back to you, Kavita. I want to bring in a new a business owner who will talk to us about what does this mean uh, to her in the launch of this new first black-owned bank. So, introducing to you Connie Sheehan, the owner of Push Fitness. Thanks for joining us, Connie. Could you tell us a little bit about Push Fitness and yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on, Bruce. I appreciate it. So I'm Connie Sheehan and I own Push Fitness. Push Fitness is actually not very far from this first Black owned bank in Minnesota, which is so exciting. So we are in the Midway area and it's a small boutique fitness center. And we offer all kinds of workout opportunities and we are geared toward women of color. And that is our focus. Everyone is welcome at Push, but that is our focus is on women of color.
Yeah, you do a good job. I know my wife was part of the team,
Right?
and right through COVID, you've been having that business go strong. And I know when COVID hit, a lot of businesses, including black-owned businesses, were severely hit because of
Mhm.
access to capital. And so then the SBA launched this PPP program that was supposed to save the small business. But we know that it had challenges in Minnesota. It was not reaching people. So tell us your experience with the PPP program.
Well, I applied for it and needed it, definitely needed it because my revenue was down and it was just a hard time. So I applied for it, and Bruce, I would get emails saying, "Okay, it's coming, it's available," and then I get information from a bank saying, "Ah, we don't have enough money. Try again." So there are multiple banks that I tried to go through to get the loan. I actually ended up speaking with a family member in Chicago to see if there was any way that he could help me out, and he was overwhelmed as well. And so the way that it finally came through is that the Neighborhood Development Center reached out to me and said, "This is now available, Connie. If you act now, you can get it." And Bruce, if they hadn't reached out to me, I know that I would have missed that deadline. So I was so appreciative that they told me when the window was open, and then I quickly got all of my paperwork in, which was ready. I was just waiting for the opportunity. But I'm such a firm believer that if they hadn't reached out to me, I wouldn't have had that opportunity. And they
Yeah,
knew me. Yeah.
yeah, I remember that there was the SBA suddenly announced on a Wednesday there was a 3 hour window
Mhm.
that someone could apply for a small businesses could apply, and that when a lot of people like you got in.
Mhm.
So a moral of the story is that when there is access our businesses, Alana, African, Latino, Native American businesses, will take advantage of the opportunity. And you
Mhm.
got that access, you took the opportunity, you got your loan, you're still functioning,
Mhm.
uh, got through COVID and doing well. So that is an important lesson about access and opportunity.
Yeah.
And so let us bring back Kavita too to talk a little bit more. But you've been listening to Connie Sheehan, an owner of Push Fitness. So check her out uh, for all your wellness and fitness needs.
Mhm.
So now let's bring in Kavita. And so both of you have seeing the need of a black-owned bank in Minnesota. So Connie, what how do you think such a bank might serve you?
So, Bruce, I think I'll just add in, I can answer your question by adding in to what you just mentioned, the moral of the story. I think the moral of the story is that I was known, I was seen. And I think that
Mhm.
happens when there are people like me. That's why I opened Push. I wanted people to be able to come to a place where they felt comfortable, where they could be seen. And I think I would feel comfortable going with a Black owned business and they would see me and know me. And so I think it's a huge benefit. Kavita mentioned it's a smaller bank. I would feel like it's more community focused, and they would know me a little bit more. So I feel strongly about that. That you are known and you are seen with people like yourselves. So it's
And
important.
that's incidentally, Connie, that's behind AmericaTV.me.
Mhm.
I would like people to see themselves on this TV, be accessible to it, and should be powered by individuals who see it. So
Mhm.
they, in turn, through their social media outlets, get the word out
Mhm.
and power this human-centered media.
Mhm.
So we're all on the same page here,
Yes.
and we're glad you brought that up. We need to be seen, and we need to see ourselves
Mhm.
in America. Um,
Yep.
uh, Kavita, what are your insights on how this first black-owned bank could serve us?
Well, first of all, the Twin Cities has one of the worst disparities in terms of home ownership, racial disparities in home ownership. So I know that's going to be a really big focus of First Independence Bank, um, working in that area. And as Connie said, I think there's a cultural competency that comes with like walking to a bank and seeing people who look like you, and seeing a diversity there, and being in a place where diversity is really welcomed. And so, I think all of us in the Twin Cities will be watching, excitedly to see, how having a Black owned bank in town might be able to help move the needle a little bit on some of these, problems that we've been facing for a long time.
Yeah, about uh, 20 years ago, I chaired a statewide working group on minority business development, and we interviewed bankers. And one of the insights that came out from that meeting was that lending to our Alana communities, African, Latino, Asian, Native American, is an art and not a science. So that cultural intelligence, the relationships, the networks, the accessibility, all of them are, if you want to serve this market and what this market that I've just got just a conservative estimate of a $16 billion market. That and a lot of this market is untapped because there are huge groups of people that are unbanked or not connected to the banking system. So I want to thank you for your time to spending here on AmericaTV.me and celebrating the first black-owned bank in Minnesota, but also talking about how it takes a village to make something like this happen, but also as it happens, we need to see ourselves in the happening. And that's what is America TV.me, powered by you. Thank you for listening and thank you for joining us. Until next time, uh, have a great day.